Hello and welcome to What the F*** Just Happened Today, your essential guide to the daily shock and awe in national politics. I'm Joe Amditis. Let's get to it. It's Thursday, December 7th, 2023. Welcome to day 1052. Prosecutors in the Georgia election fraud case signaled that they're seeking prison sentences for Donald Trump and his allies for allegedly violating racketeering laws as part of their efforts to overturn the 2020 presidential election results in Georgia, despite the fact that Biden won that state. In an email to Trump's lawyer, Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis wrote, "We have a long road ahead. Long after these folks are in jail, we will still be practicing law." Willis's team has reached plea deals with several co-defendants in the case, including Jenna Ellis, Sidney Powell, Kenneth Chesborough, and Scott Hall. Prosecutors, however, are not expected to offer plea agreements to Trump, Mark Meadows, or Rudy Giuliani. Fulton County prosecutors listed several senior Trump administration officials, as well as Georgia's top elected leaders, as possible witnesses during the election interference trial. That list includes Mike Pence, Bill Barr, Jeffrey Rosen, Richard Donahue, and Scott Perry, as well as Steve Bannon, Governor Brian Kemp, Attorney General Chris Carr, Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, and former Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan. Meanwhile, Georgia's Republican-controlled Legislature approved a new congressional map that likely violates a federal judge's order requiring an additional majority black district. The judge ordered state lawmakers to establish an additional black majority district to provide fair representation to the state's black voters. Instead, the Republicans' map dismantled one minority majority district by moving it further into Republican territory, and then created a new court-ordered black majority district. The judge's order said the state cannot remedy the Section 2 violations described herein by eliminating minority opportunity districts elsewhere in the plans. The map is expected to be signed by Governor Brian Kemp, which would safeguard Republican control of Georgia's General Assembly. The judge is set to decide whether the new maps comply with his order on December 20th. Moving on, Trump appealed a judge's ruling that said he doesn't have absolute immunity from prosecution in his federal election case and demanded that all proceedings be halted while a higher court considers his appeal to dismiss the criminal case. The back-to-back motions threatens to upend Trump's March 4th trial date in the case, and prosecutors, meanwhile, have argued that Trump is just using every possible avenue to disrupt the case in the hopes of delaying the matter beyond the 2024 election. Meanwhile, Kevin McCarthy will resign and leave Congress at the end of the year. Between the expulsion of George Santos last week and McCarthy's recently announced departure, Republicans will now only have a 3-vote majority in the House to pass key legislation, including 2 government funding deadlines. McCarthy was the first speaker in U.S. history to be ejected from the position, and it took him 15 rounds of voting over 4 days to secure the job for just 9 months. Moving on, a Texas judge granted an emergency order to allow an abortion despite state law banning nearly all abortions, with limited exceptions. The judge granted permission for Kate Cox to have the abortion because the fetus has a genetic condition with very low chances of survival, and her own health and fertility were at risk if she carries the pregnancy to term. The judge also issued a temporary restraining order blocking the enforcement of the state's abortion ban and enforcement of SB 8, which allows civil lawsuits to be filed against those who help patients receive abortions. The case is believed to be the first of its kind since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade last year and allowed states to enact their own abortion restrictions. Since then, more than a dozen states have banned abortion or no longer have facilities in their states where the procedure can be conducted. Compared with a similar period in 2020, more than twice as many people traveled out of state for abortion care in the first half of 2023. And finally, one of the world's largest oil producers suggested that renewable energy is a threat to the Earth's climate. During the UN climate change conference COP28, Saudi Arabia raised concerns about the life cycle emissions produced by renewable energy sources, which are exponentially lower than the emissions of extracting and consuming fossil fuels. Still, the Saudis emphasized that costly and novel methods of carbon removal, as opposed to wind turbines, solar panels, and other renewable energy sources, are needed to combat climate change. That's all for now. You can find the links and sources for all of these stories on the main website. And as always, visit whatthefjusthappenedtoday.com for the latest news and headlines. Until next time, I'm Joe Amditis.